reporting on the part of institutions of higher learning. I mean, Popular Mechanics has taken a stand against this technology.
Yeah.
And I spoke to the president of Ron Motors earlier this week.
Mm-hmm.
Ron Maxwell is his name. And he told me, he says, well, I went to the big three automakers, tried to interest them in this technology, and they wouldn't play. They weren't interested at all. He said, so I decided to start my own motor company. Well, there aren't many of us who could do that. I mean, we just don't have the gumption to actually start our own auto manufacturing company because Detroit won't listen when we tell them about something like this. But that's exactly what he did. He started making a hydrogen-boosted sports car that sells for $150,000.
Right. Well, I don't know, like, before I really started getting into this stuff, I'm only 27, but, it seems like a lot of the disservice has been that there's been a lot of companies, especially in the beginning who, made hydrogen boosters that just, are really below what would really work well. And I think they've given it a bad name.
Yeah, but what's interesting about that is that you have to start somewhere.
True.
And like, for instance, Ozzie Freedom and his Water for Gas or Water for Fuel.
Right.
There are an awful lot of people out there who would not have bought into hydrogen from water if it had not been in the form of a mason jar that you can put together with a couple pieces of stainless steel wire and $5 worth of materials, and you're seeing bubbles come up through the water, and there isn't an effect on the emissions. If you're on a dyno, a smog sniffer, and you put that very small amount of gas into your intake, it does affect the results.
Right. Well, and there is one of the studies that I talked about in my paper at the university from Turkey. They were using a booster that was putting out pretty low output, and they were getting fairly significant gas mileage improvement. They didn't detail very closely, how they ran the tests, but, at least according to what they've posted, they got as high as 40%.
Yeah, no, that flies in the face of what the Professor Erickson, if that was his name, what he said. He said it would be necessary to use at least 10% hydrogen to affect any kind of change, which, that's ridiculous compared to the cubic feet per minute of intake, the volume of intake air.
Right.
To say 10% hydrogen, that would be an astronomical amount of hydroxy.
Well, the other thing that I'd like to see more detailed data on is, the contention that electrolysis gas is more energetic than tanked hydrogen, and that may be part of the reason why they have much different numbers. Is because they're really basing their numbers off of a different gas.
Yeah, that's true. And then the old parahydrogen versus orthohydrogen and so on.
Right. And then the monatomic.
Yes, exactly.
Even though I've talked to several chemists about that, and they say that's not possible. But something, I still would like to see more research done on that.
Well, a scientist that I interviewed a couple months ago, in fact, he died last month, Patrick Underwood. But I interviewed him in February, and I didn't realize that when you take common cleanser like Ajax or Comet and you mix it with a little bit of water, that you're releasing monatomic oxygen. And that's what actually does the bleaching. That's what cleans a surface.
Right.
You can take a surface that no other detergent will clean and use a little bit of cleanser on it. And I've been in the cleaning business for 31 years, and I never knew this, and I never understood how to properly use cleanser to bleach out a stain. Mm-hmm. And so I went back and re-listened to Patrick Underwood's interview that I did with him, and I actually was able to clean up a piece of plastic that no pressure washing or any other detergent was able to clean. And I did repeated applications of monatomic oxygen with Comet,
right,
and got the stain to disappear. But I don't know. I mean, are other chemists unaware of that?
I don't know. I think this kind of goes back to another point about why this stuff probably hasn't been researched as much, is because when you go through thermodynamics in different classes in the university, they pound into your head that, you can't get more out than in, you can't get something for nothing, which those are true, but, I think they're misapplied in a lot of cases. But when people think, oh, well, you're going to improve your fuel economy by something that's powered by the car, then they automatically say, nope, can't happen, and so they don't even look at it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a lot of... But,
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically I was just saying that, that I think it's the misapplied use of some of those laws that turn into dogma that make, no one, that you don't actually run the test, because I think there's a lot of things we don't understand about, the universe and
we've
like
actually
that.
been kept in the dark about these things. How many, people involved in conventional energy are going to encourage you to take the high voltage coil under your hood, and while your engine's idling, while you're already using your engine to run your air conditioner and play the stereo and this, that, and the other, that you can take a parallel lead coming off your high voltage coil and perform cold fusion with it. Mm-hmm. I don't think that kind of encouragement is coming from any quarter, except YouTube videos perhaps, where you see some guy in his garage saying, hey, look what you can do with your car coil. Look what 100,000 volts will do with using just a few milliamps to affect changes on a gas, for instance.
Well, I think that another thing that maybe is part of the unfortunate thing is that a lot of the people who do research this stuff and are successful, they're not very good at presenting the results, and so they come across in the manner where it seems like, this guy couldn't have done that,
Because I can't do it.
Well, that and just, basically, how is this guy who, is doing it in his garage and, doesn't have, a good scientific lab, how are they able to do something that, we haven't thought of doing? But also I think some of that falls back on the people who are trying to present it. I think you should conduct yourself in a manner that gives you credibility, should I say.
But a lot of the guys that do their, garage or basement or even kitchen table experimenting are a little bit like mad scientists. I mean, you watch the old science fiction movies and you got people like Dr. Jekyll and so on, and maybe they don't have the best PR, ability, capability.
Right.
But that doesn't, reduce the possibility that they've actually stumbled upon something far greater than anything we're currently using.
Well, I'm certainly not saying that those people can't find something. I'm just saying that may be part of the reason why some of these things aren't accepted. Just the nature of our society.
Well, then couple that with the fact that they don't have enough money to live on or to do further experiments, and so they end up resorting to less than perfect marketing of what they are doing.
Right. Well, and I think that, if I had enough money, I probably could, design something really awesome. It's just, that's what it comes down to. When you're like trying to figure out how to, work around something because you don't have enough money to really do the experiment, you won't get as good a result unless, as you might have had if you had, the right equipment and the right, enough money to do the experiment.
Yeah. So it is a tough world out there for people who aren't financed by the trillion-dollar energy industry. You're competing against them and don't expect their blessing along the way.
But I think that a lot of, in engineering, normally they tell you to plan the experiment beforehand and you know exactly what you're going to expect. And then you do the test with what you already expect, and so you get the result that you expected. But if you're just kind of trying things that you don't know what's going to happen, I think that's where you'll end up stumbling upon something that's, revolutionary.
Okay, so let's apply that then to what you did. Again, your